Good morning, everyone, and thanks for attending today's webinar. I'm Isabel Berry. I head up marketing for Pulse Industrial, and with me today is Paul O'Shea, Manager of Channels and Enterprise Accounts at Pulse, and Nawaz Amiri, Product Manager at Spirax Sarco Canada. They both bring years of experience helping organizations with different aspects of their STEAM systems, and we'll talk about some of their favorite examples today. Today, we're here to talk to you very briefly about three industries that we spend a lot of time working with. We'll be taking questions at the end, but feel free to put your questions into the chat line at any time. Paul, ready to jump into the agenda?
For sure. Thanks, Isabel. So today, as you mentioned, we'll be touching on three industries. The first one, healthcare. We see a lot of interest in steam trap monitoring as they use a lot of energy running 24/7. And hospital sites have unique challenges and are pressured by government bodies to reduce their CO2 footprint. The second industry that we're looking at is food and beverage, where we have a lot of food and beverage customers. This industry vertical are leaders when it comes to digital IoT-based strategies. There can be many steps in the process of cooking, sterilization, pasteurization, and cleaning related to food production and food ingredients. The last one that we'll be touching on is manufacturing. And of course, huge consumers of steam and energy. We see more and more plants moving back to North America, and they're extremely focused on technology, improving efficiency on all levels. And these sites typically operate at very high steam pressures, which translates to a large opportunity for energy savings and cost reductions related to steam. In many cases, and to be transparent, the payback is a no-brainer. We decided to just stick with these three industries for today, keep it around that 20-minute mark so everybody can go on with their day. We do plan on having more webinars in the future with more examples and stories, and perhaps we'll go down the rabbit hole in one of these verticals as everybody here can imagine that there's lots to discuss. Nawaz is here as well from Spirax Sarco Canada. He knows steam intimately. Nawaz, can you introduce yourself and quickly say hello?
Thank you, Paul and Isabel. I'm glad to be joining you all here. So I'm Nawaz Amiri. I'm the product manager with Spirax Sarco Canada with a focus on complete steam trap management and digital solutions. So I focus on helping our customers reduce their operational costs on their steam systems by helping them optimize their steam trapping, reduce their wasted energy, and I collaborate a lot with these facilities to help them achieve their emissions targets. Ultimately, this is all done through the steam trap management and connected services portfolios that we have, and that includes wireless steam trap monitoring.
Perfect. Great. Let's jump in here. So the first topic we're going to talk about is healthcare, and healthcare is responsible for 10% of CO2 emissions worldwide. With that, there's a lot of pressure, pun intended, on them to cut costs and green their operations. In the U.S., we've heard information from the federal government that they've issued a call for healthcare stakeholders to commit to reducing their CO2 emissions by 50% by 2030. The call to action is to reduce their footprint in 6 years. That's not that long away. And this is a lofty goal when you consider some of the unique challenges we see at hospital sites. I was at an Association for Energy Engineers presentation last year in Boston, and I recall having the corporate energy commissioning manager from New York Presbyterian Hospital explain some of the complexities when it comes to rebate programs to reduce energy. And when one of the examples was the LED, like a simple LED retrofit, where you go into a typical office building, it makes a lot of fiscal sense to just go and have a night crew come in and retrofit your whole office floor within a few hours. But when you're talking in a hospital environment, and he showed us on his presentation, he showed a slide of just changing one light bulb and having the whole area tarped off with a step ladder. And you come to think of the operational costs and the complexities and the standards and the hygiene that needs to be met in these unique environments. And another item that he had mentioned is that when you have a lot of these hospital sites, buildings They're not new. So when you have a 60-year-old building, you're going to have 60-year-old problems. And, the simple window conversion is not so cut and dry when it comes to a hospital site that has custom windows. The cost end up stacking up very quickly. And that's why we see, steam trap monitoring and these opportunities to pluck low-hanging fruit for sites like hospitals. And my last point in regarding healthcare is, when you think about COVID, a lot of projects I imagine were on the go in regards to infrastructure or new equipment. And all of a sudden COVID happens. I imagine they're still playing a lot of catch up on those projects, and project managers are tied down trying to, stay ahead of the game while maintaining their site to make sure it's operational.
Yeah, and a common theme, Paul, that I've heard from a lot of our healthcare facilities that we work with is that the amount of work is increasing, but the number of employees is decreasing. And this, in combination with a high turnover rate, really plays a challenge in both the time and expertise to properly maintain and address these systems.
Yeah, that's a great point. And we had an interesting situation last year with an existing customer. Now, this was a major hospital in North America, and they jumped at the chance to install wireless steam trap monitors on their most essential steam traps, giving them the peace of mind that their facility was running at optimal performance. So they were notified when anything went wrong or changed. And this played a crucial role in helping them troubleshoot when they discovered a discoloration on their surgical instrument trays. After the sterilization process, which is done with steam, they immediately canceled all elective surgeries, and that was for a 3-day period. And you could just imagine the significant loss in revenue, the upset patients, mainly some of those patients that with elective surgeries may have been waiting 6 to 9 months to have their surgery day. And with this heightened management frenzy, they were able to call Spirax Sarco to help resolve the issue quickly. And the Spirax tech went straight to the Pulse View dashboard to check all the temperature and sound readings of the monitored traps. They saw all the monitored traps were functioning normally, so they were able to rule out those. And when they went to check some of the other traps that weren't monitored, they found several failed open traps in non-monitored areas, and had that replaced, and then had additional units or sensors installed on those traps, noting that there was a good need and a use case for wireless monitoring. They did find the reason for the discoloration was more closely related to packing materials. However, the first place hospitals generally look when wet packs or discoloration is found on sterilized packs is steam. And they had been required to manually test all the traps, and troubleshooting process could have lasted much longer. And
Yeah, and I remember that one, Paul, and as you mentioned, they wanted to make sure that before we even left that site, that any of those extra traps they found that were tied to their sterilization department were monitored, so they got the peace of mind that they were looking for. And they also made sure to encourage their sister hospital to implement a similar solution to monitor the steam traps tied into their sterilization room, going all the way from steam generation to the point of use.
Thanks for the story, guys. Now, how about food and bev? That's another industry that's hyper focused on cleanliness, and they use steam in many of their food production processes.
yes, they use steam to cook, blanch, distill, and much more. And you're right. In order to maintain the highest level of food safety, they need to be very vigilant in maintaining strict food temperatures at all stages of production. From a health and safety perspective, I recall going to a major meat processing plant and learning about the paper trail and the shutdown procedures in place in the event of just a single drop of water leaking from the production floor ceiling. So it just goes to note how that kind of constant checking, whether it's health and safety or quality related, requires several employees to spend almost all their entire shift watching thermometers, gauges, and just to ensure compliance that our food and beverage customers see an ROI, not just from energy and steam costs, but labor costs as well. These companies aren't only pressured by their local governments to reduce emissions, I would argue the consumer is increasingly influenced to choose a sustainability focused food beverage offering with a company that is doing more good than the others. I mean, many folks will argue there's a bit of a paradox. Most people want to make smarter choices, but don't want to pay more for it. But it's just another reason to help sites reduce their carbon footprint and production costs, so the customer isn't as hit as hard making those better decisions.
And what's really great, Paul, is that we've noticed that with food and beverage industry as a whole, they're generally leaders when it comes to embarking on a digital transformation journey, right? They're heavily leveraged already with digital solutions when it comes to maximizing production and productivity. However, now they have this large focus of sustainability that they are actively looking for ways to meet. And this is where the familiarity of utilizing digital solutions with production now can be used to target low-hanging fruits on any steam system when it comes to optimizing and managing efficiencies, and as you mentioned, overall reducing production costs. And that low-hanging fruit in any steam system is going to be steam traps and making sure that they're functioning properly.
Exactly. And one of our customers, Ferrero, recognized the need to monitor steam traps. And Ferrero's famous for making chocolate. They knew the risks of failures and purchased a high-end portable manual trap testing device. And when we met with them, they had the device for about 8 months. And when we asked to see some of the data and from the testing, they admitted they hadn't had yet time to use it. So they happily had us install pulse sensors and now are one of our signature accounts. I always love to visit them. I mean, you have conveyor belts flowing with chocolate, so it's a bit of a Willy Wonka experience. So it's a great plant to visit.
Yeah, and I really enjoy brainstorming with a lot of our food and beverage customers as well, because many of them are feeling that intense pressure to still maximize productivity and production, but now they have this added layer of complexity to become more sustainable, and that's where innovation is going to be a key part for them to gain market share in the space.
And then we get to manufacturing. Traditionally, a sector that's been slow to evolve, they have really gotten on board with the IoT. They have temperature sensors, vibration sensors, sensors on doors, on storage tanks, all sorts of motors and conveyors and more.
That's right. Manufacturing facilities use automation and now IoT to make workspaces efficient, safe, increase productivity, and avoid line downtime. That's why they use steam in so many of their process as well. Steam is cost effective, powerful, very flexible, and it's easy to increase or decrease pressure to be most effective and efficient for specific processes. When Invista, a chemical manufacturer, approached us asking for us to install sensors on the traps, they challenged us to find a way to integrate our sensor data into their existing IoT monitoring equipment or gateways. The idea was to help them scale from an enterprise level. They didn't want to manage 20 to 30 different gateways from other IoT-based monitoring systems already on site. So we put our developers on it. We created custom sensors which speak to Invista site gateways and communication hubs. This helped reduce the technical noise on the production floor and makes it easy for Invista IT teams to manage. As well, Pulse software team has developed a RESTful API. So larger sites like Invista that have their own central management systems, they can bring in data such as steam trap telemetry, alerts to their own systems so that it can expedite into work orders. We at the end of the day, we want to remove as many barriers as possible to help project managers, maintenance managers integrate solutions that align with their site needs. For other sites, plug and play is often the best choice, but for Invista, they had their own unique initiatives and goals. We see the opportunity for savings on both energy costs, troubleshooting time, productivity, but we can't forget a much safer way to inspect and monitor your steam traps. We have a phase 2 rollout plan for them later this year when we get our C1D2 certification, which is in the final testing stages of testing as we speak.
Yeah, Paul, and Class 1 Div 2 certification will definitely open up a lot more applications, like you mentioned, steam tracing, which a lot of these oil and gas and other manufacturing sites that are involved with chemicals and extreme environments typically have, right? And we find that generally in manufacturing facilities, it's usually the biggest bang for your buck because they tend to operate at much higher pressures than a lot of other industries. But not just having higher pressures in the site, but it's also throughout that facility where they have a high number of high pressure steam traps. So from a financial perspective on its own, it's a great fit and it's easy to justify.
Yeah, and we function very well in most other environments. Our sensors are all ingress protected, and we do offer a variety of gateways for different circumstances. But just to give you a quick rundown of Pulse's solution, so it is meant to be a plug and play setup, where you basically have your gateways as your communication hubs that speak to the individual sensors. And so you go plug in your gateway. It's got it connects to the network or the strongest cell signal at your site, and then you go and set up your sensors. And these sensors take about 5 minutes to install. It's basically installing hose clamps and attaching it onto the steam pipes. So there's no stopping production. There's no need to shut off lines. There's no need to integrate with IT departments and improve firewalls. Everything is meant to remove some of those difficult barriers to get a project underway. And once we have that data communicated, it's communicated through LoRaWAN, which is made for industrial environments. It's very strong. It's got an ability to go through walls, steel doors, and it's really meant for industrial sites where you're just sending low data packets basically to the cloud, where the information, the steam trap temperature and sound data is then translated into our failure detection engine, where then the magic happens and we send out an alert to our customer to let them know that they've got a failed steam trap. And like I said, it is set it and forget it. So, the idea is once you're connected, all your sensors are ready to go. It's not something where you have to go and log in on the dashboard every day and have another dashboard running up on your screen 24/7. We'll just simply send you an email when there's a failure. And we also have our customer success team as a redundancy that will follow up with any failures that do go out. We'll check with that user. Hey, did you get that failure alert? We just wanted to check, and just to make sure that we can validate that it was a confirmed failure and go from there.
Perfect. Thanks, Paul. These have been really great, very interesting examples. Thanks very much to both of you. It's great to understand how the Pulse solution has been adapted to work for different challenges and with different goals in mind. Now, we do have some questions on our chat. Are you guys ready to take some now?
Sure.
Okay, great. So let's get to some Q&A. We have some questions on the chat. First one. So, hello, I'm someone in maintenance and I don't have a budget of my own. Is there a way I can justify a Pulse steam trap monitoring solution? Who wants to take that one?
Yeah, Paul, I can take that one if you don't mind.
Sure.
Yeah, so one of the main advantages for your team is also taking into account safety perspective, right? So many of these traps are going to be in hard to reach places. They're going to be found in like hot spaces, confined spaces, tight areas, up ladders, etc. And I actually, this reminds me of a story really, where I was actually at a large industrial facility a few weeks ago, and we had had a great conversation about safety because it aligned with both of our core values. And they had actually mentioned, to my surprise, that the number one concern at their facility had absolutely nothing to do with the gases, the chemicals, all these other big hazards that you would typically point your finger at. They actually mentioned to me that the number one risk was walking through the site, right? Slips, trips, and falls, right? And I think that's very relatable to a lot of sites out there. And that's exactly the same risk that survey technicians face in the field, whether that's internal survey technicians or external third-party survey technicians, because they do have to climb ladders to reach these steam traps. They do have to walk through these tight corners. They have to put themselves in areas that are not necessarily the safest to spend long amounts of time in, right? And additionally, when you have an external third-party person going through the site to test your steam traps, it also requires a site escort, which then puts them at risk of these same scenarios, and then puts that strain on the labor force that we were talking about earlier. And that's from the safety perspective. And then from the reliability perspective, if you're not addressing these quickly, you could be potentially reducing the lifespan of a lot of that equipment that it's servicing. Anything to add, Paul?
Oh, I think that's yeah, I think you made a lot of great points there. It's yeah, I guess definitely you think, a lot of these facilities, it's especially when capital isn't cheap these days, they're trying to extend their infrastructure, their process equipment beyond the design life. And the best way to, continue or to keep your assets at a high level or at a high quality level that they're operating well is to make sure that you understand what's going on with your systems. And obviously steam traps, failures, open or closed failures can impact the health and the lifespan of a lot of your infrastructure on site.
Okay, excellent. Thanks, guys. We have another question. What happens when a failure is detected? What are the steps to resolve the issue?
I'll take that. So when the sensor detects a failure, so we send out an email alert and send out to the end user, and following the email, Pulse's customer success team will also follow up to ensure the user has recognized the alert and that the failure is validated. So we do have some redundancy there. It is meant, again, the whole overall Pulse solution is meant to be a set it and forget it. Once you've set up and you're connected, you basically can walk away and wait for an email alert when you have a failure. And the idea around that redundancy is that the key piece to having steam trap monitoring or 24/7 monitoring is to make sure that somebody's going to manage that, or when there's a failure, make sure somebody's going to act upon that. And that's where we really want to add that extra step in our customer success follow-up and cadence to make sure that site managers and maintenance operators are able to capitalize on catching those failures early instead of later. And for Pulse, it was an easy decision for us to partner with Spirax Sarco Canada, who is considered a leader in the industry when it comes to steam optimization, safe practices. Spirax Sarco helps Pulse create that end-to-end solution for sites that basically don't have the resources or the manpower to fix and maintain their own traps. It's Pulse's job to detect the failure, and with Spirax Sarco's help, they can advise whether the trap needs to be replaced, fixed, or may provide another trap suggestion or design to help the system run more efficiently and smoothly.
Excellent. Next question is, what is the impact of a steam trap failure that's left without fixing it? Oh, good one.
Oh, I think, Paul, I can take that and kind of build upon what you just mentioned there. So there's actually quite a few consequences of failed steam traps. Though they're a little piece of equipment found throughout the steam site, oftentimes they go unchecked or unnoticed because they're sometimes becomes higher priorities within a system. But just to give you some examples of what that impact looks like for a failed open steam trap, right? And these are the harder ones to identify. And they're harder to identify because typically the plant will still operate. However, you're going to be wasting energy and money. You're going to start seeing increased production costs. You might have plumes of steam visible from the vents, right? And that's that visibility nowadays, as companies are becoming more conscious with public perception, just even though it's steam and it's going to just be water vapor, there still sometimes is a negative perception of, hey, something's coming out of your stack, it must not be environmentally friendly. So there's sometimes facilities want to just remove that or minimize it as much as possible to improve public perception. It can also cause problems in the pipes, because now you're going to have steam going through a pipe that may not have been designed for it or to operate at such a high velocity, right? Because steam's traveling 10 times faster than condensate. And then it creates a safety hazard, right? With water hammering. So the last thing you want is to blow out an elbow due to water hammer from a failed open steam trap that could have been easily repaired, right? And the failed closed scenario, it's a little bit easier to identify because if it's on a process unit, most likely someone will notice that the temperature is starting to drop. However, when you have maybe hundreds of these steam traps throughout the facility, one or two may not necessarily get found. And when we do manual audits all the time, we find failed closed steam traps because people are still not able to detect them, right? Your plant might start to waterlog, right? You're going to maybe start seeing reduced plant output or product spoilage. You might see complaints for heating, whether you're for underheating. So if you have a domestic hot water system, some sort of building heat, or even process heat, you might start getting complaints of not hitting temperature. And it actually also could create a safety hazard with water hammer as well, but with water condensate backing up into the steam line. So, failed open is kind of condensate hammering in the condensate line versus when it's a failed close, it starts hammering in the steam line. And it could lead to freezing, right? If it's an outdoor condition or you're heat tracing some product, you might either freeze that line completely, reduce the viscosity to make it way harder to pump whatever fluid it is that you're heat tracing. And it can reduce the reliability of that equipment. So if you have like a steam trap right ahead of a control valve, and you flood that line, well, now you're going to slowly wear out the seat of that control valve, or vice versa with a heat exchanger. If you have flooding in a heat exchanger that's not designed to be flooded, you could end up with thermal shock and reduce that life of that equipment. So that's kind of those consequences of those failed steam traps. So you can see there's quite a lot, and a lot of different things can happen, even though it's such a small piece of equipment on your steam system.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Noaz. I learned a lot there too. Okay, last question, and we're almost out of time. So the question is, we don't have the bandwidth to install sensors. Do you have people to do the installation for us?
Sure, I'll take that one, Isabel. Yes, so Paul's customer success team, we have system engineers here that can go and, for sites that don't have the resources and want us to come in and do the installation and commissioning, we can do that. But we also have the support of partners like Spirax, Sarco Canada, who go and do their own installations and audits on site to help these sites get up and running, as well as we have other resellers across the United States that are working with Pulse in different regions that we can call upon in those situations where they would like to have somebody help lift the weight of that project and get it into the plant.
Beautiful. And we are actually out of time. So I want to thank you both very much for attending this today, and people listening to this. We will be doing more of these going forward. So send me your topics and let me know if there are other things that you'd like to cover. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.